Natalie.
Good morning, Edmond. How are you?
A-okay.
Fantastic. Just for the people that have just joined, welcome everyone. Kia ora. On this beautiful Friday morning, we will be recording the session and loading it up on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You will receive a link afterwards. Edmund will also be using some slides, and he's kindly agreed to share those with us, so I will email those to you as well afterwards. And if anyone has any questions, please use the chat box on your screen, and Edmund will stop and take some questions and hopefully answer those as well. And I would like to hand you over to Edmund now. Edmund?
It's really fun to do that. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
I'm
getting some thumbs up.
Yes. And people are saying, yes, we can hear you very well.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, okay, yes. I'm glad. Anyway, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. This is fun in the midst of a wild time, and it all seems to be going in transition. So today what Natalie and Sean has asked me to do is share with you some of the general work I do around resilience, share a little bit of my background, and kind of see if there's anything we can offer in a short period of time that you might be useful or you might use in your own work. I know we're following up on this in a week or so. I'm not sure the details with the cover programs related to people, teachers, educators who work with youth, but also just general, just general people who work with a variety of people or for your own lives. So today, I'll shift to the PowerPoint. There's an opportunity, obviously, if you have any questions or thoughts, please share them on the side of the screen. Natalie will filter them through. My thought is, I'll talk for a while, present an overview, then we'll kind of take a time if there's any questions. This thing again, will save us about 10 minutes at the end as well. I'll try to keep it concisely to an hour. I know sometimes these things tend to go, but I also know everybody has other obligations. So let me open this. Thumb up somewhere, okay? So what we're focusing on today is in the last year or so, I've been mainly focusing my work around schools. I live in the Hawke's Bay, and we developed a program that we've been in most of the high schools throughout the Bay, doing a 4-module resilience program for kids. But this comes out of work that we've done with a variety of environments, whether it's business or professionals or sports or athletes. What's especially interesting now for me is we get to think about resilience in the midst of weird times and crisis. For us in New Zealand, we've been very fortunate with how this whole coronavirus is going. Hopefully we keep that momentum. And we've been so fortunate because we've adapted to the weirdness of the times so wholeheartedly. Other areas of the world seem to be in struggle. Obviously, from my accent, I'm from the US. And with my friends and colleagues there, the concern is just a lot of inconsistencies in how we approach this. So mainly what I'm interested in is what we know about resilience and how we can apply that on a daily basis. My personal background, I have a background in psychotherapy and psychology, but mainly I'm a sports psychologist, or I'm a performance coach. I've had a long history of sport in the US, competing and coaching. I taught at a university for a long time in the United States. And then when we moved here, I'm in the School of Health and Sports Science at EIT. And what I'm interested most in the material I present is there's so many different ways we can look at how people adapt to the unexpected. What I'm interested in, what I've always been interested in, is the idea of mental skills. For any of you who follow sport, we know that we don't tend to use the term sports psychologist anymore because it has all kinds of different meanings. But we do tend to use the term mental skills. And when I think of the term skills, what that tells us and what we see with athletes is that what we're going to talk about, the attitudes we adapt, the thought patterns we adapt, the behaviors we adapt, are skills, which means they can be learned. Some people have a greater facility for this kind of thinking. Some people it comes natural to, some people it's more of a struggle. But everybody can learn to do these skills and approach our problems in a way that we see gives us some help. The main thing that interests me about sport is not so much that I follow any team or any particular sport, but all sports psychology is learning to perform under pressure, learning to perform in a stressful environment. That's why all cultures across the world throughout recorded history have always had sport, have always encouraged their young to practice sport. Not so much that it's important to win, although that's fun, but the idea that you are preparing yourself mentally, physically, emotionally to perform within a set of constraints. Okay, so what we learn there and we can generalize, okay, are skills that we can develop to perform in a situation where we don't have all the control of the world, which pretty much speaks to the situation we're in now. Basically, there are three main areas of focus in the program I use, whether with clients or certainly in the schools. What we talk about is cognitive strategies, which is mainly what we'll talk about today. We talk about stress management and stress control. I won't spend too much time on that today, but stress, and as most of you know, for the last 20 years, stress has got a bad rap. But you look at the research recently, everything revolves around stress. Stress isn't necessarily bad. It's stress. Basically, stress is just a sense of urgency. We experience stress anytime we have an absence of resources. If I don't have enough of something, that's stressful, but not necessarily bad. And again, we can look to sport, we can look at emergency situations, we look at the people who work in emergency rooms and doctors and law enforcement and medical and fire. All of them develop skills to perform under stress. The question is, can we take those skills and generalize them in other avenues that are not as specific? So today what we're going to do is some quick tools and an overview of cognitive strategy. Oh, I'm sorry. Then the third aspect is how we take those skills and how we interact with others. People who are better at communication seem to be more resilient. There are all different ways of judging that, what that means. But our relationships with others are incredibly valuable. So the three areas I look at: cognitive strategies, which lead to behaviors; stress management, which leads to effective behaviors; and the communication skills. Today, what we're looking at, look at the data, look at the research, what resilient people seem to do when they need to do it. Sounds a little bit glib, but that's all it is. Everything we talk about today is behaviorally oriented. Okay, again, going back to sport, if you want to learn to play a game, if you want to learn to play tennis, you try to copy what good tennis players do. If you want to learn to play golf, you try to copy what a good golfer does. If you want to learn to be resilient, what we can do is look at what resilient people do and then try to pattern our behaviors after that. My favorite quote, which I think relates to this, comes from Margaret Mead. Always remember that you're absolutely unique, just like everybody else. Excuse me, I'm choking on my breakfast. Always remember that you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else. The key of emergencies or crisis, if anybody ever follows Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs, is the more stressed we are, the more in crisis we are, the more of an emergency is, the more we become more similar to each other. Okay, everyone in crisis, regardless of your religion, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of your culture, everyone in crisis, serious crisis, reacts the same way. Anyone who's drowning drowns the same way. Anybody who's ever lost somebody expresses themselves in much the same way. So what we're interested in is different ways we can look at this that think about our similarity. Because again, when everything is going well, we have a lot of variation. But everybody right now across New Zealand, across the earth, has probably, in this last 6-7 weeks, come closer to understanding and being in the exact same situation as a broad majority of the people than we ever have before. all of us, up to a point, are facing the same situation. Okay? So there's a tremendous amount of similarities. My reference points, I think in terms of kind of a combination of crisis management, what do we do in a crisis? Sports psychology, how do we perform under stress, and how do we prepare for that? Behavior and performance psychology. Behavioral psychology is come into the forefront in the last 30, 40 years. It's the kind of psychology I practice. And the basic premise of that is, okay, what we do determines who we are. Our behaviors have a direct and immediate impact on our emotions and our attitudes. Okay, more so and more immediately than the other way around. So I'm interested in behaviors. I'm interested in what we do. I'm interested in performance. I'm interested in change theory. We've seen tremendous examples of change theory. We've seen situations, if any of us are following world politics or how this is going, so interestingly, the different cultures, different countries, different groups are responding to this in such different ways. And then we'll look at a little martial art theory. I mentioned that I do sport. The sport I've been involved in is traditional Japanese karate. And I've practiced since I was a young boy, and I competed internationally. And the only reason I bring it up is now is probably not the time to, do physical stuff. But the martial arts looks at two things very similar to what psychologists do. Okay, martial arts looks at two things. One, how do we turn conflict into cooperation? Now, sometimes conflict is between us and others, but really, right? We all know this. The conflict we're experiencing right now is within ourselves. All of us in this situation are being forced to do things we don't want to do. How well do we adjust to that? How well can we own that? How well can we maintain a sense of autonomy and still function, right? So conflict to cooperation. The second aspect of the martial arts, again, which speaks to any kind of emergency training, okay, is how well do we perform under stress? Okay, everyone can think back and go, oh, I wish I did something else. But the question is, how well do we perform when we need to do something? Okay, simple definition, all of us are familiar with. Resilience is the ability to properly adapt to stress and adversity. Okay, properly adapt to stress and adversity. What that means is we face a challenge, and the key word here, which I like so much, is properly. What does that mean? There are a lot of different ways we can look at it. Properly, for me, what it means is I react in a way that gives me the outcome that I would hope. Okay, whether that outcome is how I feel, whether that outcome is how I do, whether the outcome is the results that I get. Okay, but I'm in the midst of stress and adversity. Am I able, to adapt to it in a way that I am able to get the outcome that benefits me the most, comes closest to allowing me to be the person I want to be? So I think that's interesting. The model I use, and we use some others, but this is the most basic model, has to do with 4 aspects of being, okay? So today, the simplest model, what we're going to use, tries to keep these 4 attributes or these 4 characteristics in place, tries to keep them in balance. All we are, and when we think about resilience, okay, the only things we're able to respond with is what we think, what we do, how we interact with people, and how we feel. And all of us, and I'm assuming most of you are in the helping professions or work with others or interact with others, we know in this situation, our thoughts can either work for us or against us. What we do can work for us or against us. How we interact with those around us, what we decide to do, works for us or against us. And our emotions work for us or against us. So what I'm interested in is how we can use these attributes to allow us, to be as resilient as possible. Okay, a couple things about stress and when we are at the risk of losing it. Okay, if you look at a lot of the research, a lot of ways of thinking about this, basically there's stress emotions that catch us and distract us. Okay, one model looks at the 2 stress emotions are anger and fear. Okay, those are the emotions that bring us out of balance. Now, it isn't that anger is good or bad or fear is good or bad. They're just attributes. They're just factors. There's no question. But I'd like all of us to think about right now, if you can, and there's a lot of you out here, think about something that makes you angry, or think about a time you've been angry. It is impossible to be angry without focusing on something that has happened. We are angry about something that's happened. Even if I think about something that might happen and it makes me angry, by thinking about it, I need to identify something, right, in my cognitive past that has happened, right? So anger, when we're angry, focuses on the past. It's unavoidable. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? Fear, if we think about fear, focuses on the future. It is impossible to be afraid of something because we are only afraid of what's going to happen, right? It could be anything. You walk across the street and you hear squeal of tires, you're afraid you might get hit. You're waiting in the waiting room and you're waiting to see a doctor because you have some unexpected symptom, you're afraid of what they might say. Now, all of these things are normal, but the point is, it's a distraction. Resilient people are able to, seem to, process that anger, something they need to do something about, process that fear, something they're worried about, yet they are able to focus on what they need to do in the immediate. Okay, so in some terms, we think in terms of mindfulness is about that. Okay, the quickest balancer we know is action, to do something. We know from research that the quickest way to get rid of depression, okay, the quickest way to get rid of anxiety, okay, there's not a lot of psychology or babble. The easiest way is to do some exercise, right? Because it's about balance. We talked about this. Balance is our thoughts, our actions, our relationships, and our feelings are doing the same thing at the same time. What does exercise do? Okay, the best kind of exercise to do to create balance is something that makes us gasp for air, because nothing focuses is like trying to catch our breath and getting some satisfaction. So one of the big things we look at is simple exercise, but we're not going to talk about that too much today. Okay, today what we want to do, what I'd like to do is just think about some stuff that works. We'll explore 2 cognitive strategies, okay, 2 ways of approaching this. And again, it seems to be what resilient people do. If they can do that, maybe we can do that. And 1 behavioral construct that allows us to use this as effectively as possible. Let me unshare. Okay, Sean, are you there?
Yep, I am here.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or thoughts? Can we take a break or should I just go on?
I haven't seen any questions
Cool.
come through, so.
Sounds good. Okay. Anywhere along here, now I'm real big with comments, thoughts, suggestions, also disagreements. I almost nothing I like as much as disagreements. If someone's out there going, well, that doesn't work, I'm interested in that as well. So whatever you're thinking, however we can use this. Okay, let me go back to sharing the screen. This format, even though we've been doing this academically, I'm doing this, the idea is incredibly difficult for me, as I think for a lot of us. Some people really seem to like this a lot. I'm old school enough that I seem to like face-to-face, but we'll get through it. Okay, so I'd like to look at some stuff that works. If you're there and you can, either on your phone or paper and pencil, I'm going to ask you to jot down some notes. I'm going to ask you to give this some thought, and I'm going to ask you to kind of work through this. Again, it's a strategy. Cognitive strategies are just way that we approach ideas. These are 2 that resilient people seem to use. Going back to that before, I'd like to also point out that in my work and when I think about these things, one of the things I think is fascinating is it seems that the same principles that apply to individuals also apply to groups. Okay, so when we look at this, when you look at resilience, if you look at crisis management, if you look at constructive thinking, okay, we know, okay, that the same principles that apply to individuals apply to groups. Okay, the same factors that apply to groups apply to families. Same factors that apply to families apply to clubs. Same performance factors that apply to businesses apply to sport teams. So all the things we're looking at, for better or worse, we can think in terms of large groups, small groups, okay, individuals approaching a variety of different situations. Okay, whoops. Okay.
Edmond, if I could just briefly butt in, people are asking if you could share the PowerPoint on your computer, because what we're seeing is your desktop with the PowerPoint in the middle.
Okay, I can do that. Let me go to that. Not a problem. Didn't realize I was doing that.
If you go to current slideshow, yeah, I think that's
I'm good.
it.
Okay. I thought I had done that. Not a problem.
Thank you very much, Edmond.
Thank you. Okay, so some stuff that works. Before we do it, I'm not sure if this is going to work. I hope it is. Turn your sound up. I'm going to show a real quick video. Okay, it's a real life video. It takes about 4 minutes. It's almost the best example of resilience I've seen in an emergency, stressful situation. Some of you may have seen this before. And again, the reason I tend to use sports so much is we get to see all these factors happening in real life. You know, everybody experiences stress, but most of the stress happens in our head, or it's inside, or people can't understand what we're going through. Again, one of the most useful factors about sport is we get to see people trying hard. We get to see people succeeding and failing. We get to see people running into frustration. So this is, it's about 10 years old now. These women are competing to get on the US Olympic team for the 600 meters. What they've done is they're running heats, if you know how this works. So there's about, I believe it's about 20 to 24 athletes are competing for 5 slots. So they basically run against each other all day. It'll clear up as we start this. We're looking at the woman in the 3rd lane. The commentator is going to be talking about her because she's favored. She's been running well all day. And one of the things about resilience we know is you have a goal. And what we see here, she has a strategy. What I like about her is her strategy will be fairly famous because of this video. Her strategy is, it's not as nice as she seems. Her strategy is they're going to go around the ring 3 times. Her strategy is after the first one to get behind the girl that's in front of her. Then she stays behind that girl for about 1.5 laps. And what she says is she likes the other runner to hear her footsteps. So basically, she likes to freak her out. Then in the last lap, she takes off. So she basically paces her, then takes off. So we're going to watch and see how this strategy works. Again, the commentator talks about her because she's favored to win. And then what we're interested in is the aspects that speak to resilience.
The 600-meter underway. Heather Dornan in Minnesota finished second this event a year ago. She was in lane 4.
And Dornan is probably going to be your favorite. She actually won the NCAA championships in 2006 in the 800, but she only won 1 Big Ten championship in the 2 years.
3 laps in this event, 600 meters, 3 times around the 200-meter track here at the field house.
She's second now.
She's looking very confident, and the Penn State runner is just running amazing today. She did win her heat in the 400, but ended up taking 4th overall.
That's Fondor moving into the lead, a sophomore from Penn State. Dornan been running second.
Dornan last year scored 23 points for the Golden Gophers in their Big Ten championship. So they're really relying on getting a lot of points from her this weekend. And she's just coming back from Fondor now in the home stretch, heading into the bell line.
Dornan falling down, gets up quickly, but that's going to cost her. Lucky she wasn't injured.
Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dornan is flying down the backstretch.
She is catching up.
She is going to catch Fondor, and she may catch the leader.
Wow.
She's got 5.
This is a gutsy effort by Dornan. Can she pull it out? She's moving to 3rd. Dornan coming down the stretch from the outside. Dornan coming out strong.
Okay. As a coach, I find that fabulous. And also as a coach, I lied to you, all of you, about most of this. I was right about what a runner she is. I was right about the fact that she's favored. Okay, I was right about the fact that she has a strategy. What I didn't talk about is the fact is her strategy right at, what do we think, this point?
Points for the Golden Gophers in their Big Ten championship. So they're really
right about here, still has a strategy on top of it. We don't know if she's resilient. We just know she's a good runner. Sorry. This is the point we know she's resilient. Okay. To me, that's fascinating. And it's cool that she won. That isn't the main point. The point is how quickly she bounced up, how quickly she got up. And she was able to do what a lot of resilient people are able to do, right? She was able to change her plan in mid-stride.
Quickly, but that's going to cost her. Lucky she wasn't injured.
Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dornan is flying down the backstretch.
Catching up.
She is going to catch Fondor, and she may catch the leader. Wow.
She's got one.
So the question through this is, what is she thinking? What does she do with her feelings? How do her relationships help her? We call that spontaneous resilience. Okay, so here's some questions. I'm going back a little bit. Okay. During that, before and after the fall, what was she thinking? After she fell, nobody would have blamed her if she just laid there and goes, "Oh my God, I lost," or looked at her mom in the stands. This is her home field. I've ruined it. I'm not going to the Olympics. And most of you may imagine or know, to get to this stage, this consumes not only her, this is her entire family's life for 5 years. If you're competing at this level, there's track meets, there's training, everybody's involved. So what did she think? What could she have thought that would have hurt her? What did she think that helped her? It's an aspect of resilient thinking, because either would have been fine. It could have been, "Oh no," or "I got to get up." What was she feeling? I imagine she felt the very first instant as she's going down was A, bang, bouncing across on her face, disbelief, then panic. Nothing wrong with that. But what did she do with those feelings? You go across the circle to actions. Nobody would have blamed her if she spent an extra half a second or a second waiting there just going, "Damn it," hitting the ground, got off, walked off, because nobody would imagine. But her actions were different. And then we have to assume her relationship with her mom, her coach, her family, okay, the fans, what she expected, what was she doing with that? So it's an interesting kind of hyper-dramatic example of resilience. Okay. Right. So let's go on a little bit. Okay, what I'd like you to do right now, if you had a chance, ask for your phone or thing, okay, not this dramatic, but while you're there, if you could write down 1 or 2 actual challenges you feel that you're facing right now. These could be emotional challenges, that how hard this is. These could be interpersonal challenges, your relationship with others. These could be business challenge. I don't care. Just something, this is a nice little break we're taking together for an hour. But just think about a challenge you're facing that if you were more resilient, it would help you deal with this a little bit more effectively. Just write down 1 of them, maybe 2, and we're going to kind of use that as a reference point about some of the mental strategies or cognitive strategies I'm going to make. So what are 2 challenges you're facing? Can be about you, can be about others. I'll give you about a minute. Okay, hopefully you all have something. Can be 1 or 2. Some of you are writing furiously and you have a list of 10. Well, cut it down to a couple. If some of you can't think of any challenges you're facing, you should go outside and use your time. You seem to have it covered. You don't really need this. Anyway, okay, so let's go on. One strategy we use is what is called the GPS method. And basically, my premise is that there's a GPS in your head. Okay, everybody knows what a GPS is. Okay, what a GPS is, obviously I have it here. Okay, global positioning service. So what it basically does is it tells me how to get places, right? So if I put Wellington, I'm living in Hawke's Bay. If I put Wellington in here, okay, this message goes to a satellite, which is kind of creepy, comes back, gives me directions, okay, and sends the directions back. Okay, so it's pretty easy to do. Okay, a GPS continually triangulates. Okay, now here's the question. Literally, what does a GPS tell you? Okay, and I'm happy if you write in a couple comments. Just real quick, okay, what does the GPS tell you? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen, and maybe if some of you can write, just off the top of your head, how a GPS works and what does it tell you? Natalie, we have anything?
We do. People say it tells you where you are. It tells you how to get where you want to go, how long before you turn, where you're at, how to get from A to B. It tracks you.
Cool. Okay. What's fabulous, okay, is most of those answers are wrong. Okay. In the big picture, they're right. Here's, if you think about it here, and this is gonna, as soon as I say this, it sounds silly, but this is so crucial to resilient thinking. The thing that GPS tells you, literally, is what to do next. The GPS, if I put Wellington here, GPS doesn't go, I don't know, it's pretty far. GPS tells me, go to the corner and turn left. Okay, GPS then tells me, go 2 kilometers, turn right. Now, what we know, and when we look at processing, and when we look at athletes, and we look at people who do well under stress, people who perform in stressful situations, regardless of how important the situation is, that seems to be what resilient people think. Okay, resilient people seem to recognize, okay, what they need to do next. Okay, so, and again, so now for a minute, okay, literally that, okay, look at the challenge you have that you wrote down. If, as soon as this was over, you literally wanted to say, okay, I need to deal with this challenge in some way. Now, it can be overt, it can be subtle. What I'd like you to do is, if this is over, think about it. What would be the first thing you would do? In fact, what you might want to do, okay, is make a line across that piece of paper. On the left side, okay, there's you can put an X there, that's where you are. Before we do the GPS thing, figure out, say to yourself, if I had dealt with this challenge, or this challenge was easier, where would I be? What would be what is, not the solution, what is the outcome? What is the outcome I want? You know, maybe I want to be calmer. Maybe I want to have a better relationship with my family. Maybe I want to figure out what to do with my business. Okay, maybe I want to go in a different direction. Maybe I just want to do something, I'm not even sure. All kinds of challenges. So where you are, and what the outcome is. Then, and again, it's blindingly simple, ask yourself, what is the absolute first thing you need to do to resolve that issue? Okay? And you can do that basically all day long. Okay? But here's what we know. This is exactly what resilient people do. Okay, one example of this you might think, and I'll go back to the big screen, but I just want to keep it here for a minute. One example you might think is most people who are not resilient, okay, and usually when we do this with an audience, we do it all together and it's kind of funny, but maybe you'll do this with us. Okay, people who are not resilient run into a crisis, have a concern, have a fear. If you're the girl, fall down. And people who are not resilient put their hands on their head philosophically and go, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Emotionally, mentally, physically, cognitively, and it's understandable. They're overwhelmed by emotion. Okay, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. People who are resilient, something bad happens. The girl who fell down, she falls down. Emotionally, she starts out by going, oh no, oh no, oh no. But in a relatively short period of time, she asks herself a question. What should I do now? That seems to be the essence at a basic level of how we think about resilience. The ability to say to yourself in one point, and then there's all kinds of strategies for this, what should I do now? To focus on a different outcome. And you can almost see the girl doing that in the example of the running. Okay. Natalie, go on. Any questions? Any thoughts?
Yes, I've got a couple of thoughts from Jasmine. She says, a couple of thoughts spring to my mind. Firstly, the way we behave when we're angry or fearful will not necessarily create a sense of balance, depending on how we choose to manage a particular situation.
Exactly.
And secondly, social determinants ultimately affect people in different ways when it comes to experiencing similar situations, e.g. someone who is poor with very little resources and support could be more adversely affected by COVID-19 in comparison to someone who is more well off.
Absolutely correct. And I want to be clear, and it's an excellent question, that this set of recommendations, okay, is relatively simple, but it's not easy. Okay, but the fact remains, and then again, this is the work. The fact remains that everybody in the situation needs to decide something. What should I do now? And there's a certain set of parameters. Now, some of us, right? Okay, and when we work in a larger context, we work in terms of mentoring and helping and finding support. Some of us ask ourselves that question: what should I do now? We don't have an answer. So for them, and then we work with the kids, the answer is reach out for some help. Try to find something, try to find the right answer. I recognize that there's challenges here that are incredibly arduous, incredibly challenging. But the reality is, in all situations, if you look in any group, either the most socially, financially disadvantaged or the most advantaged, there will always be some people in every group who answer that question differently. What should I do now? And then they take a different course of action. Some people ask themselves, what should I do now with the course? And they're more proactive. Some people act more self-destructively. Okay, we see that in situations where people have limited resources. I mean, we can all ask ourselves, if any of us have a brother or sister, or brothers or sisters, okay, and we come from the same father and mother, so we have the same genetics, let's assume. Any of you in that situation with a brother or sister, in a crisis, one of you answers that question differently than the other. One of you, perhaps, or some of you are more resilient than others. So I agree. Okay, but this is, and there's other strategies, but this is an urgent first step, because this is all that anybody ever does. Okay, so even in those situations where people have a very challenging environment, some people in the same challenging environment respond in a different way. And what I'm suggesting is the premise of how they respond, regardless of personality, it often comes down to, if we look at cognitive behavioral therapy or cognitive behavioral thinking, always comes down to the thought. Being able to say to yourself, what should I do now, gives you an awful lot of freedom, especially if you're terrified, especially if you're overwhelmed. And then when you say to yourself, man, I don't know what I should do, and then you say to yourself, maybe I could reach out for some help. What would I do if I wanted some help? So I agree with her entirely, but that doesn't change the reality of the situation. Any other comments?
Someone asks, how about people with past trauma and brain goes into survival mode?
Absolutely, I agree. Okay, and hopefully people who past trauma and brain who have gone into survival mode, they're working with somebody, okay, which is how they know they have past trauma and survival mode. Okay, they've worked with a professional who is helping them. And maybe what they need to realize is, I need to go back to that. I need some more assistance. I need some help. Okay. The only thing about this doesn't change the chaos of the situation. It allows us, and again, all we're looking at is people, for example, people with past trauma, people who've had terrible situations. Some, okay, respond differently and react differently than others. Again, when we look at it, a fundamental premise is they're able to ask this. So I agree with all of that. But it doesn't change the reality that people are where they are. They need people who need help. This is what they need help for. What can you do now? And when I say, what should you do now? It doesn't mean, I need to jump in my car and go somewhere fancy. It just means, I may need to take a deep breath. I may need to remember that, I have primary depression, endogenous depression, and what I'm feeling right now is a depressive symptom, and maybe I should call my psychologist. Maybe I should reach out for somebody. Okay, maybe I should recognize that I'm having a panic attack and I've had these before. And what have I done in the past that has helped me with those? Okay, so it isn't the outcome. I mean, I just may need to feel better. Well, have I ever done anything that I've learned how to make myself feel better? Maybe it's the time to do that now. One of the things we see in therapy, and the school of therapy that came out of the 60s and 70s called strategic therapy. And what they would always do is they use a premise I love. It's prescribing relapse. And what that means is, often people who have issues, psychological issues or addictions or depression, they're going along okay. And then something happens and they kind of fall back into the pattern they were having before. And it's hard not to say, oh no, it isn't working. The reality is often what they need to say is, I need to do that again. Okay, so if something has worked before, I'm just having a relapse. I'm going back. I've had panic attacks before. I seem to be having one again. It's not that it isn't working. Maybe it's more. I need to go back and do the things I did before that helped me come out of the situation. Questions, thoughts?
Thoughts are definitely coming through. People really understand what you're saying and they resonate with it. Some say some of the best people I've met or had conversations with are those who have been through dire situations and came out on the other side more resilient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes, in many ways, going through trauma sets you up to be able to be more resilient through practice and the need to be resilient to survive.
Absolutely. I agree with that. But, and again, we don't want to discount those people who are having a hard time. But one of the things we recognize that the people who have gone through trauma and have come out more resilient, they seem to be able not, and often some of them it's just their character. Some people are just more buoyant and hardy than others. I recognize that. But again, what we seem to realize is if we've been successful before, okay, one of the suggestions is asking yourself, what did I do before? What got me out of that? Now, can I do that again? It isn't that it doesn't work or I've failed. It's just I need to apply those things again. It's like a little kid. Little kids run along, they fall down, bang, they jump up. Okay, little kid runs around, same kid keeps running, falls down again. He doesn't lay there and go, oh no, I've fallen down, that didn't work. No, he gets up again. So, and again, not in any way implying that this is simple, but I'm, as a behavioral psychologist, behavioral psychotherapist, I'm interested in the outcomes. Okay, so if we look at the people who've been in difficult situations, how do they think about that? Well, maybe we can adapt and try to think about it in those situations. Most people are resilient, don't say to themselves, oh, I'm all powerful. They are well aware of their weaknesses, their flaws, their concerns. They're very aware of that. What they're able to do is accept that in themselves and move to a little different area. Okay, let me go forward with one more premise because I want to make sure I save some time for questions. And we'll go with this. I lost my thing. There we go. Okay. Let me share that. Are we sharing? Yeah, we're sharing right now. Let me pull this to the big screen again. Okay. So the question is, right, if you are here and you want to get to here, what might be the very first thing you do? Not even the most important thing, but what is the first thing you do? Now, you may have an idea, or you may say to yourself, again, I know I'm repeating myself, I don't know what to do. So maybe you would reach out and ask for some help or find some ideas. Okay, so we look at that. And then I'm asking that we apply it in your own challenge that you wrote down. If you're willing to buy into this premise, what's the very first thing you would do? Okay. When we get off this call, when we shut this Zoom thing down, what is the first thing I can do? Maybe you would do that. Doesn't mean it's going to resolve everything, but it's the very first step. And again, GPS thinking. GPS doesn't go, it's a long way. It's raining, be careful. GPS says just go to the corner and turn left. The other thing I like about the GPS premise that I really like very much is if you'll notice, a GPS does not yell at you when you make a mistake. So the GPS, you had so many of us, we make a mistake and we feel so bad and shame. No, GPS doesn't care. When we first got a GPS, I used to drive with my kids. I would turn the GPS on. I'd set it for home just because I like that. I know where I'm going. And I would turn right. I would turn the wrong way. My kids go, oh, no, what are you doing? I just like hearing them tell me. And I think what I like most is even though I made a mistake, I was going the wrong way, the GPS in my head does not call me stupid, does not yell at me, does not ask what's wrong with me. GPS just says, go to the next corner and turn right. Okay, if I keep making the wrong mistake, it just goes this way. The second part, and again, it's a fairly simple metaphor, is when do we need a GPS most? We need a GPS most when we're lost. Okay. The question, what should I do now, is incredibly vital. Okay. It's almost in an emergency the only question that matters. Okay. And again, the answer may be first, Okay, I got to breathe deeply and I got to try to relax. That's a good answer. Okay, so we look at it that way. The second strategy I like, it's a little different point of view, is what we call values to action. Okay, and a lot of people think in these terms as well. And basically, they let you decide who you want to be. It lets you decide who you want to be. Okay, a little bit different strategy. So, for example, everybody claims values. So one of the values I might have is I think you should be nice to people. Okay, so if I turn that niceness into a value, okay, and then I turn that value into a trait. So I think you should be nice. It's good to be nice. A trait is I'm going to try to be nice. Then I want to turn that trait into action. If I was nice, what would I do today? Again, fairly simple. Okay, I have a value. I want to turn that value into a trait. And then I want to ask myself the question, if I was nice, if, a lot of people, they wish to God, they were more confident. Okay, so the trait is they value confidence, but they can ask themselves, okay, I'm not, but if I was confident, what would I do? And then they try to do that. I mean, that's the essence of behavioral psychology, right? You have someone with social phobias. Okay, in the sense you ask them, well, if you didn't have the social phobia, what would you do? Well, I might go shopping. I might go out to the store. I might go pick up my kid at school. And then we ease in on that. Okay, so if you were confident you would go out, why don't we try maybe just going to the corner and doing that for 3 days this week? You turn that trait into an action. If I was confident, I'd go outside. So I tried that, right? So you kind of change that around. Okay, it's basically the reason that we study myths and legends and role models. Okay, we often ask ourselves, what would they do? I mean, I know personally, I have people in my life who've mentored me that I admire very, very much. And a long time ago, I started thinking not how great they are and how wonderful they are and how lucky I am to know them. But in a challenge, I do literally ask myself, well, I have a good friend, Neil. What would Neil do? Then I try to do that. So we see this as a value, and it turns out that resilient people often think in this same way. So with the challenge you have, the challenge you've written down, you might ask yourself, to deal with this challenge well, what kind of person do I want to be now? Or to deal with this challenge well, to be really good at this challenge, maybe I'm a parent and I'm having really difficult times with my teenagers. Okay, what kind of person do I need to be? What kind of parent would I need to be to do this well? If I didn't know, I might be the kind of parent who would go out and read some books, who would go get some advice, who would talk to the teachers. Could be all kinds. I might be the kind of parent who needs to be a little bit sterner or a little bit more easy. I don't know. But then I ask myself, what would that person do now? You need to make that jump, and resilient people seem to do that. If I was this, what would I do? And then they do that. Now again, this is another suggestion that sounds simple, but it's not easy. But again, this is the reason we have role models. This is the reason we listen to legends. This is the reason, okay, as a culture, we have attributes that we want to do, but we just forget about it. Oh, kindness is good. Okay, good. If I was kind, what would I do now? Okay, what do I need to do right now? Well, maybe with the COVID-19, I need to be patient. Okay, it's driving me crazy. My business is going down the toilet, having a hard time, but we seem to be doing the right thing. But then there's that next question. If I was patient, what would I do? And often the challenge is that people who are not resilient get to the first step and then they get angry at themselves because they're not that. People who are resilient seem to ask that question. If I was kind, if I was brave, if I was confident, if I was patient, if I was nice, if I was smart, what would I do now? It's a great question to ask. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. If I was smart, what would I do? Well, if I was smart, I would do this. Maybe I can do that. And again, a simple thing. But again, if you remember one of the very first things I said, regarding Maslow, the closer we are to crisis, the closer we are to an emergency, which is an absence of resources, the more similar we all are. Okay? Everybody's very, very similar, in a burning building. And then we can apply it. Okay? If If I was the kind of person I was, let's say I'll go with patient. If I was patient, what would I think now? Then I would literally think that. If I was patient, what would I do now? I would do that. If I was patient, what would I feel now? Well, I'd catch my breath and I'd accept the fact that I'm frustrated. If I was patient, how would I interact with the people who are important to me now? Okay, one behavioral construct that we've been using, let me see for a second what time it is. One behavioral construct that we've been using is this one. And what we've been using, it comes out of sport thing. It comes directly from the most fundamental principles of coaching, right? And coaching is just about changing behaviors, changing attitudes, developing new skills. We use coaching in all kinds of ways. Coaching, another word for coaching is parenting, okay? But basically, when we think about this, it gives us the door in. Comes back to this. Last thing we may want to think about is in the challenge that I ask you to identify, this often gives us a guide of what is the first door in. We can't do all of this at once. But for some of us, to address that challenge, the easiest thing to do might be to change how we think about it. For some of us, to change that challenge, fix that challenge, the easiest thing we do, okay, might be to change what we're doing. For some of it, it's to change how we feel about it. And that goes to the thoughts we have to think ourselves through. And some of us, it's how we interact with others. Finally, resilient people seem to know in their hearts, okay, and however we define it, right, whatever that means, what we get from George Bernard Shaw, success covers a multitude of blunders. When we look at resilient people, they seem to cut themselves a lot of slack. They accept the fact that they're going to make mistakes. They accept the fact that we're going to get it right. We're not going to get it right every time. And they cut themselves enough slack where they don't shame themselves into resenting all of that. And again, in New Zealand, we've been very, very fortunate. The public comments from Jacinda basically cover all of this all the time. In her statements, okay, regardless of the politics, whatever you feel or believe, but in her statements, she addresses what people are feeling. She addresses the science of what we should be thinking. She addresses the actions of what needs to be happening. And she addresses the responsibility we have with each other. One final thing for those of you who do psychology or philosophy, the two things we've talked about kind of embrace both the Western and Eastern way of viewing psychology. If we think about psychology, traditional Western mid-20th century psychology, any of those things, okay? Western psychology, we seem to try to think a lot. We talk about our problems, we share our problems, we talk, we prioritize, we theorize, and then we kind of change our actions. What's interesting is Eastern psychology goes exactly a different way. If you know anything about Eastern meditation, what we're trying to embrace from mindfulness, they do a different point on that little model I use. Before they do anything, you take a deep breath and you calm yourself. Okay, there's just different approaches. Some of us like to think through a problem first. Some of us need to calm ourselves and then think through a problem. Some of us don't want to think at all. We just do a behavior. We recognize that doing a behavior will help our thinking and help our feelings. No one way is right, but all of those kind of work together and give us different starting points. We're later than I wanted to be. I'm happy to take some questions. If anybody is willing to stay later, I'm happy to do that. Whatever you want to do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Edmond. There are indeed some questions that are coming in and some comments. Someone asks, what about a situation where a mother of 4 cannot utilize the prescription relapse therapy because she has a codependency on her abuser?
At its most that's a very specific thing, but at its most fundamental, I'll go back to the basics. She needs to ask herself, what do I need to do now? Okay, and I know, simple but not easy. She may then need to go to her social worker. So she may need to go to her doctor. Okay, so the question is, if you're overwhelmed, the question is still the same.
Yeah.
What do I need to do now? And you may find yourself, you're too overwhelmed to do something. So the question then is, I need to still take a first step. How do I feel less overwhelmed? How do I access some resources? We take an awful lot of independence, and then we shame ourselves because, we have I come from sport. The greatest athletes in the world, the best team in the world, okay, not because we're here as the All Blacks, as far as performance and outcome. Okay, the All Blacks as a team have between 15 and 18 coaches. You have the best team in the world, okay, with the best performance in the world, and all those coaches do. None of those coaches play rugby as well as the players do. But all those coaches are for is to help when things aren't going right.
Mm.
One of the things we want to do, one of the things related to autonomy, is as much as we can reach out. Okay, get coaching, get mentoring. And that may be the thing she needs to do. Say to herself, what do I need to do now?
Yeah. Another theme that seems to be coming through is breathing. A few people commented on, it's often a good start to just take a deep breath because that will calm down the adrenaline.
Absolutely. And and when we do the larger program, we spend a little variety of time on this, but we spend an awful lot of time around stress reduction. And again, one of the things, again, using that model, one of the things I may need to do now when we talk about emotions is I need to take a deep breath. I need to center myself. I need to do that. No, that's vitally important. What I'm interested in is the relationship between cognition and behavior and emotion. Yeah. So breathing is absolutely, and integrating that, doing what we need to do to lower our anxiety and tension level so we can answer that question and ask that question.
Absolutely. I've got another question here from Tina. What about someone that is highly resilient in most areas of their life, but suffer from strong anxiety while driving? And this has not stopped them from driving, and they are familiar with the breathing techniques for calming. They're also engaged with talk therapy. So what would you suggest?
They may be, well, first of all, if they are driving, they may actually be doing the right thing. Maybe they're doing fine. Maybe part of it is accepting the fact I have a lot of anxiety about this. Man, I'm good at anything, right? I can perform brain surgery, or I can climb up on a roof, or I can, jump out of a tree. But God, driving freaks me out. I seem to be doing pretty well though. Okay. So when I'm driving, what do I need to do? Again, there's nothing wrong with the symptoms. The most resilient people in the world recognize, I got a quick temper. I got to hold on to that. Or I have a lot of social anxiety. I know some brilliant teachers and brilliant speakers. Every day they know, I got some social anxiety. What do I need to do? Well, I need to breathe. I need to practice. I need to focus on a spot. So I'm not saying that, but I mean, if they're resilient in all kinds of ways, and if they know they have driving anxiety, but if they are driving, perhaps the question is, what they need to do is accept that about themselves and enjoy their success and continue doing what they're doing. So whatever they've done so far that allows them to drive. And again, talk therapy is good. For this kind of thing, cognitive behavioral therapy works very, very well. Okay, setting small goals. But what I'm thinking is, first of all, recognizing that, yes, of course, I have driving anxiety. I know that. What am I going to do about it? There's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's actually one of the things that I saw coming through from Jacinda as well. She often states, be kind. And it's not just be kind to everyone, but also be kind to yourself.
Absolutely. Again, it's that last thing, I rushed through, is resilient people seem to accept that success covers a multitude of blunders. And I mean that very seriously. The people who are resilient accept the fact that, 40% of the time I fall on my head. This isn't always going to work. But I'm going to give it a try.
Yeah. Keep on trying and being kind to yourself and to others. I apologize if you hear dogs barking in the background.
Is that you?
Yeah, that is me.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's you. I'm so pleased. No, I am so pleased that's you. That's perfect.
I've got some more questions if you've got time.
Sure, I'm good. I'm good. I don't want people, I know people have different things to do, but yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I've got a question from Maxine here. I work with a cohort of older people who have dementia and their care partners. Sometimes they're not able to be resilient for themselves or listen to advice from myself or coaches, etc., because they are so stressed and need to take a break, have respite. We end up advocating that sometimes the next step is identifying the need to step back so you can think clearly.
Yes, I think that's fabulous.
Yeah.
And of course, and again, sometimes part of it is that GPS thing, and an aspect of GPS thinking is not only what do I need to do next, but the aspect related to that as important is where do I actually want to be? Okay, do I actually want to work so hard that I give myself a heart attack, or I have an anxiety attack, or I lose it and I'm not able to help my loved one over the long term?
Yeah.
It's and again, what is and again, often people in these situations need assistance. I mentor all kinds of people and work with all kinds of people. But that absolutely sounds like the best advice you can. If I want to be around for the long term, if I want to do as much as I can, I need to take care of myself as well.
Yes.
Then what should I do now? Again, it's almost funny. I love the one for the values to actions. I love the one asking, if I was smart, what would I do? Well, if I was smart, I might take a break, because that also feeds to our emotions. I would recognize that makes me upset, and I would recognize that's difficult for me. And that's, again, what counselors and mentors can help with.
Yeah. Another question here from Ember is asking, what about when working with young people? How do we relay this message in a way that they can understand and apply it?
Assume that they're as smart as we are. Seriously. I think one of the things we've learned in working with young people, working with anybody, right? We live in a multicultural society more so, but there's all different ways that we think about cultures. There's culture based on ethnicity, based on education, based on background, based on age, based on religion. And one of the things we know is if we can be as direct and open and honest as possible, but with young people, we developed this program with teenagers. The question, if we go with the most fundamental, is this is your situation? What might be a good thing to do now? Now the question is, but of course, with young people, some young people, you go through, there's that age of reproductive viability where biologically it's imperative for us to break away from everybody. It's, there's a biological imperative to screaming at the top of your lungs, go to hell, you're not the boss of me. Okay, that's related to reproductive viability. I need to get out of my village and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Sometimes just accepting the fact that young people are very difficult to talk to. And sometimes if there are young people, we know that's a challenge. Okay. But let's assume they're as smart as we are.
Yes. Sonia says, so learning to figure out what do I need to do right now, presumably is a transferable skill that people can be built up over time?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the first stage is simply asking the question.
Yeah.
Okay, simply ask, what should I do now? And then if you come to an answer, what would I do now? And you come to an answer and you do it, that moves you forward. When you ask that question and you genuinely don't have an idea, that gives you an answer. I need to find out what should I do now. That's your answer, right? But it's the willingness, but the key word there is the word do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the action.
That's maybe the number one factor between resilient people and that's the action. Resilient people actually do something, but it's nothing wrong with God. What should I do now? I have no clue. Well, maybe I could find some help. So there's that, but actually, words are so powerful, and the words that come out of our own mouths are so powerful. I can't ask everyone to do this, but I'm going to ask everybody to do this. And I think, and I do this all the time, and I think it's fabulous because of how it works. Okay, so you got to, hopefully you're by yourselves, but if not, everybody who's listening, there's a bunch of people online. Everybody who's listening, real simple. I would just like out loud. You have to say it out loud. Repeat with me. Okay, I suck. Okay, you got to be the role model.
I suck.
Okay, one more time. I suck.
I suck.
I suck.
I suck.
No, wait. Now say this. Yay me.
Yay me.
Yay me.
Yay me.
Yay me.
Yay me.
Okay, now, everybody who's done this, you still feel better after you say yay me than after you say I suck.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how you feel inside. Two relatively random sounds, a pair of single syllable sounds, because of what they mean. But by saying that, and here we are at the essence of behavioral psychology, by saying that, it changes your mood. The All Blacks, Why did they do the haka? It isn't to scare off anybody, you know, facing South Africa is not scared. But by doing the haka, doing the actual haka, it increases your courage, increases your closeness to your mates, increases all kinds of stuff, right? So literally saying to yourself, what should I do now? And having the words come out of your mouth and hearing those words in your own head frequently opens up some possibility for you.
Great.
Yay me. Yay me over I suck.
Yay me. Right, I see we're going 5 minutes past 11. I think we're going to close now. A
Sounds
lot
good.
of people have said thank you very much. Great ideas. Thank you. Thanks for the information and techniques. Really, really enjoyed it. So, yeah, there's still lots of thank yous coming in. So I'll just
glad.
repeat what we said at the beginning. We will send around the slides, and we have recorded the session, and I'll load that up on Facebook as well and YouTube. You'll get the link afterwards. And if anyone has got any other questions, fire them through to me. I'm sure I can send them through to Edmond.
Absolutely, and I think we're scheduled in a couple of weeks. Are we still? I don't know if we're still taking people. We're doing kind of a 3-hour workshop around this.
Yes.
But we'll also be talking about the stress management and the breathing and that stuff, and as well as the communication stuff. But everybody, thank you so much, all of you. I'm so pleased so many of you stayed here. Which is gratifying. I hope you got something out of it. My email will be on the bottom of my slides that I send out. I would love to chat with any of you or write or whatever you want to do. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Edmond, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Bye-bye.